we're meeting today, I think the majority of us at least, meeting today on the land of the Noongar people, and I'd like to pay my respects to them, past, present and emerging. Because this meeting is being held electronically, I would like to consider a motion being moved to suspend aspects of the standing orders. So the proposed motion would be that under clause 18.1 of the Standing Orders Local Law 2002 as amended, the committee resolves to suspend for the duration of the meeting the following clauses, being clause 3.5, public question time insofar as it relates to public statements, clause 3.13, deputations, clause 8.2, members to occupy own seats. Is there anyone happy to move that motion?
Lauren, I will.
Eileen?
Yes, I will.
Miss Newby? Yeah.
Yes.
Jacob Corelli's happy to second.
Jacob, thanks. And then do I need to, sorry, just to clarify, Ken, do I now need to go through everyone else and get them to confirm they're okay? Or do I just say, is there anyone opposed? And if there isn't, then it's carried unanimously.
Thank you, Presiding Member. The policy states that you should ask whether anyone is opposed, give a decent pause to enable anyone to make an objection, and then you can proceed with carrying it unanimously, should no one object.
Okay, so I will just ask again if there's anyone opposed to the motion that we have before us.
Sorry, Lauren, I missed that. Can you say that again?
I just sought clarification as to whether there was anyone opposed to the motion currently before us.
Yeah, what motion is that?
Oh, did you miss that bit, Councillor Coles?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a live motion that's been moved by Ms Newby, seconded by Mr Sorelli, that under clause 18.1 of the Standing Orders Local Law 2002 as amended, the committee resolves to suspend for the duration of the meeting the following clauses. Clause 3.5, public question time insofar as it relates to public statements. Clause 3.13, deputations. Clause 8.2, members to occupy own seats.
Oh, look, I'm not opposed to it, but I would ask a few questions if I can. So what's the plan then for people wanting to ask questions? Is it the same as an OCM where they would submit their questions in writing and then you as the chair or someone else would read out those questions or deputations or statements?
So these would be questions from the public, you mean?
Yep.
I will seek clarification from
the
CEO.
And that's my concern. Why do we have a live motion here with things that people don't understand? That's my concern. So we're now trying to put a motion up saying we don't want public question time and we don't want deputations, but what is actually the answer then, and what are we to do with public question times and deputations?
Madam President, can I suggest that the Manager of Governance might be able to answer this question in accordance with the policy that Council's adopted?
Yes, please.
Thank you for the question. So the text of the suspension of the standing orders is covered in the policy that was adopted by Council on Monday night related to electronic meetings. The policy details why these particular clauses in the standing orders should be suspended to enable the effective conduct of the meeting. In respect to public questions, the policy again goes through the process by which members of the public may submit questions to the meeting by 2 p.m. on the meeting day. Each of those questions and the responses will be provided to councillors prior to the meeting and will be recorded in the minutes, but not read at the meeting. Similarly, with statements and deputations, those that are received within the timeframes spelled out in the policy would be recorded in the minutes and distributed to councillors prior to the meeting, but would not physically be read out at the meeting.
Councillor Coles, does that adequately answer your question?
No, it doesn't. My second question then is, has there been opportunity for the members of the public that wanted to ask any questions or make a statement or a deputation for this evening's meeting were they made aware that this meeting was to be done remotely? And were they given an opportunity to submit any questions in writing?
Certainly, Councillor Coles, the agenda has been made available publicly. I would have to seek clarification from Paul as to the, I guess, the invitation for members of the public to contribute questions in advance of the meeting.
I'll refer to the Manager of Governance if I can, Mr. Presiding Member.
Yeah.
Sure. As soon as as practicable after council made the resolution, there was the public notice of the change to electronic meetings, which included a Facebook post. As ever, with the ARG committee, any public questions that would have come in by 2 p.m. Would have been responded to, but no public questions were received.
So can I get confirmation that this meeting was advertised to ratepayers and residents as being electronic meeting? That's my first question.
I would ask the Manager of Governance to confirm what I thought I just heard him say, in that it was advertised as soon as practicable that it would be electronic.
That is correct.
And where was that advertised?
There was an update provided on the Shire's website and on social media.
Okay, thank you.
So I would just ask now. Sorry, Councillor Coles, are you talking to me? Okay, I'll just ask again if there's anyone opposed to the motion before us.
Madam Chair, can we please have confirmation that all members of the ARG committee are in a location where they are going to have constant internet communication for the duration of the meeting, and are not in a work situation where they have other people around them, please?
I'm happy to do that, going around alphabetically in terms of asking each member of the committee to confirm that they are in an appropriate location to participate in the meeting fully and in privacy. So I'll start with Ms. Kelly Barry.
I'm in an isolated office, total area outside of my house, but by myself.
Thank you, Kelly. Councillor Rob Coles.
I'm actually at work, but I'm in my office as a supervisor. I have my own office.
Jacob Surley.
Yes, I'm in my home office.
Councillor Tricia Duggan.
I'm in isolation. I'm around nowhere.
Ms. Eileen Newby.
Sorry, I'm in my work office in West Perth, and it's a isolated office with my door closed.
Thank you. Councillor Michelle Rich.
I am in the councillor boardroom at the Shire offices on my own.
Mr. Randa Ruta.
Home office by myself, potentially a dog in the background, but that should not happen.
Councillor Gary Singh.
Yes, I'm in my home office on my own. Thank you.
And I can also confirm I'm in my home office without any disturbances from anyone. I'm by myself. Thank you.
Sorry, can I just ask a question? Sorry, Councillor Strange. I'm just a little bit concerned that I'm being targeted here. I'm at work, serving police officer. Can I not be on this meeting while I'm at work? If that's a conflict or a concern, then I'll now withdraw from the meeting.
I would ask our Manager of Governance to provide some, or the CEO to provide some guidance on that matter.
Madam Presiding Member, I don't mind answering that question. I don't think that's the point, Councillor Coles. I think the point was that it's up to each member to confirm they're in an appropriate place for the meeting to take place. So,
sorry, Paul, that wasn't the question. The question was, can I confirm that no councillor is at a place of employment? I am currently at work as my employment, am I going to be disadvantaged and asked to leave this meeting because I'm currently at work? Yes or no?
I wouldn't have thought so, no.
Thank you.
No,
I'll remain in the meeting then. Thank you.
Councillor Coles, I'd just add, I guess the situation just occurred where I was hearing voices from your microphone and I just became confused as to whether you were speaking to me.
It was a police radio, so you could probably hear the police radio. As part of my job as a police supervisor, I need to listen to that radio. Again, I would ask that I'm allowed to participate in this meeting. If I'm not allowed to participate in the meeting, I will now send my apologies and I'll hang up.
No, I think you're able to participate, Councillor Coles. I think you're able to participate. That's fine.
Okay, so we'll just
And sorry,
return...
can I ask another question? I'm just on the Shire's website now. It doesn't appear there's any notice here about this meeting being. Hang on. No, it does say. Sorry, disregard. It does say electronic in small writing in brackets. Thank you.
Okay, so we do have a live motion before us. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? In that case, I consider that motion carried unanimously. Given we are taking this meeting via electronic measures, I'd just like to outline some principles of conduct for the purpose of the meeting. So the pace of an e-meeting should be slow and orderly. The following practices will help avoid confusion and support effective e-meetings. Please speak clearly and slowly, as connections may be distorted or delayed. Always state your name to indicate to the presiding member that you wish to speak. Restate your name if the presiding member has not heard you at first. In debate, please only speak after the presiding member has acknowledged you. Then state your name so that others know who is speaking. Please follow the presiding member's directions and rulings. If you are unclear about what is happening in an e-meeting, immediately state your name to draw the presiding member's attention and enable you to then seek clarification from the presiding member. Avoid looking for opportunities to call points of order. Instead, politely and respectfully gain the presiding member's attention and explain any deviation from your meeting procedures, the Local Government Act, or any other relevant matter. Participating electronically in a meeting, whether that meeting is electronic or a physical meeting, presents logistical challenges and can impact the effective conduct of the meeting. An electronic meeting is as effective as the worst connection to the meeting. In addition to the behavioural protocols described previously, participants should ensure that they have a stable connection to the meeting and are able to give the meeting their full and proper attention. To ensure the best connection possible, meeting participants are requested to turn off their camera and mute their microphone when not speaking. I believe we don't have the option to have the camera on anyway, but in terms of the microphone being muted, that would be appreciated. In terms of voting, the presiding member will ask if there is any member opposed and pause. If there is no member opposed, the item is passed unanimously. Where an item has been debated, the voting method shall be by each member participating electronically being called by the presiding member in alphabetical order by surname, except for the presiding member, who is in sequence to state whether they are for or against the motion being put forward. After the councillors' votes are stated, the presiding member will also state their vote. And the members in alphabetical order are as per outlined previously under the previous motion. Are there any questions in relation to anything that I have said so far?
It's Councillor Coles. I'm just wondering why the cameras are disabled. Is that to save bandwidth or is that not the case?
I believe that is the reason, but I'll have that confirmed by the CEO.
Madam Presiding Member, I'm sure the Manager of Governance can answer that question. I'm pretty sure it is as well, but happy to have him answer.
It is primarily a bandwidth concern, but just enables a little bit for the ease of the presentation of the meeting to the public through the recording. If you have cameras on, it tends to flick a lot between the various images as people speak. The key part, obviously, with the recording of the meeting is showing the decisions of council, or in this case, the committee, which will be reflected on the minutes on the live screen as it would be during an ordinary meeting.
And this format is certainly, as I recall, the demo that you sent through previously. So that hasn't changed from my understanding.
That is correct.
Councillor Coles, have you got any further questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, I'll move on to item 1 then, attendances and apologies, of which there's 1. Ralph, our internal auditor, is an apology. Item 2, petitions and deputations, of which there's 0. Declaration of councillors and officers' interest, of which there is 1, which is Ms. Kelly Berry. I'm sorry, I can't bring up that at the same time as everything else I've got on the screen. Ms. Berry, would you mind just reading out your interest?
Just on items 5.1.2 and 5.1.4, being my spouse is an employee, and also on the offshore WE as well.
Thank you for that, Ms. Berry. Is there anyone else that wants to raise any declaration of interest? We'll move on to item 4, receipt of minutes or reports and consideration of adoption of recommendations from committee meetings held since the previous council meetings. 4.1, minutes of previous audit, risk and governance committee meetings. 4.1.1, audit, risk and governance committee meeting 15 November 2021, rescheduled from 1 November 2021. Is there anyone that's happy to move those minutes?
Happy to move, Chairman.
That I can't tell who that is. That
Councillor
is
Rich.
Councillor Rich, thank you. And Ms. Newby, are you happy to second?
Correct.
Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. 4.1.2, Special Audit, Risk and Governance Committee meeting held on the 14th of February 2022. Is there someone happy to move these minutes?
Tricia, happy to move.
Councillor Rich moved.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone? Just a seconder, happy to say, and Ms. Newby, thank you. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Okay. Moving on to item 5, reports for consideration. 5.1 reports, 5.1.1, 2021 compliance audit return, SJ 2484. Is there anyone with any questions in relation to this item? Ms. Berry?
Just on the attachment 5.1.1, attachment 1, page 6, under the finance section, item number 1, it was the appointment of the audit committee and appointed members. The comments say that the members were appointed unanimously. That's not the case. I believe it was carried 6-2.
Okay, can I seek? That's certainly my recollection as well. Could I just seek advice from the Director of Corporate Services that that was is something that should be rectified in terms of an amendment?
Apologies, Chair. Yes, I will refer to the manager of governance as responded on that question, but I too have a recollection that that's perhaps not quite as accurate as it needs to be.
I just asked the member to list the question, the particular question that referred to in the compliance audit return, please.
7.1A. It's under the finance section on page 6, question number 1 in the finance section.
Yes, that is an error in the compliance audit return. That if the committee was willing, the motion could be adjusted to reflect that section that response needs to be changed.
Okay. So that was 7.1A. Is that correct?
Well, it's really question 1 under the finance section, and that's referencing section 7.1A of the Act.
So would it be possible, Fraser, for you to quickly draft what the amendment to rectify the error would involve?
Sure. Mandy, if you want to just type, it would just be that do we actually need to reference the voting, Dr. Parker, or can we just say that the audit committee was appointed at a special meeting?
No, there's no requirement to reference the vote in that regard.
Okay, so we could just remove the word unanimously then. So
yeah.
So the shown with the word remove from question 1 under the finance section.
So just to clarify, Fraser, the amended motion would be that the Audit, Risk and Governance Committee recommends that Council approves the 2021 compliance audit return for that period. As shown in attachment 1, would you then clarify as amended?
Well, the wording as there reads okay with me, as long as the appropriate committee members agree.
So sorry, I'm just seeking clarification again. So are you saying that you wouldn't need to reference the change? The change could be made without referencing it in an amended motion? Oh, sorry. Look, sorry. I'm now behind as amended with the word yes. Okay, it's clear. Please forget that comment. Please forget that comment.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, is there anyone at Kelly? Ms. Berry, you still have your hand up. Have you got additional questions?
Oh, sorry, do I untick it to take it down?
I think so.
Sorry, that's all.
New to me too. Councillor Singh, you have a question?
Just a quick one. If we are amending the motion, will the minutes need to be amended as well from the previous meeting? Because that was where we appoint the committee members. Just a question and clarification, please.
If I could jump in there, no. That answer is to reflect the minutes of that meeting.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions from anyone in relation to this motion or report? There being no further questions, I would ask if there's someone happy to move the motion before us as on the screen. Thank you, Ms Berry. And seconded by Councillor Rich. Is there anyone opposed to the motion as it's now before us? Motion is carried unanimously. (5.1.2) Regulation 5 and Regulation 17 reviews, SJ 3653. Is there anyone with any questions in relation to this item? Ms Newby?
Yes, on if we look at the attachment, which is 5.1.2 on page 8, there's a management comment which says that they acknowledge that in a small number of cases, purchase orders have been raised prior to services being requested. However, that's not actually what happened. What happened was that the purchase orders were raised afterwards, not before. So I didn't quite understand management's comments, because the actual issue that was raised by Paxton was where we hadn't raised a purchase order until after the invoices.
Could I please ask?
One question.
Oh,
so go on.
I think we'll deal with them one at a time. Could I ask the Director of Corporate Services to provide a response to that?
Can I just get that question asked again? Which page of it's page 8?
Page 8, under
Yes.
management comment, Fraser, it says on the second line, acknowledges that a small number of cases purchase orders have been raised prior to services being requested. In other words, purchase order was raised prior to the services being requested. But in actual fact, what came out of the compliance under the 6.1 there, point 1 is that purchase orders should be raised in advance of the requesting services. This is saying that the services were, this is saying that you have complied with it. In other words, they were complaining that.
Yes, they've got the wording around the wrong way. However, the new training that is proposed does deal with the issue above. But yes, I acknowledge that they should say the purchasing or the ordering has occurred before the purchase order, and it should have happened around the other way.
Yes.
Nonetheless, there's no change required to any documentation. It's just unfortunate that the document that answer's got that to front. But I guess with the committee's endorsement, that training and the follow-up to those occurrences when identified will continue.
It isn't possible to change the document?
Sure. We could do that administratively. It's essentially a management comment just to get that wording around the other way.
It just, if someone picks it up later, or refers to it next year when they're looking back, it might cause confusion.
By all means.
So just to confirm, Fraser, does that require then an amendment to the motion?
No, essentially what we're talking about is the management's comment. So we're happy to just change that administratively.
So, Ms Newby, you have a second question?
Yes, I was just going to raise the purchase orders is a perennial problem, as we all know, in the accounting business. A lot of systems these days mean that invoices can't be processed into the system unless you actually have a purchase order on them. In other words, there's a stop in the system. And I was wondering if it was possible for the council system to have that, because it would make sense and it would stop this happening entirely. No one could process an invoice unless they had unless the creditor had a correct and matched purchase order on their invoice. It's just a simple control item.
Can I ask the manager, the Director of Corporate Services to respond to that? Does our new system facilitate that outcome, Fraser?
I'll need to take that on notice. That will require a little bit of investigation before I make a. That's a very fixed way of processing creditors. Certainly, there could be a review of the processes and the ability to better control it through the software.
So in terms of responding to this question, will that outside of this meeting, would it be something that you send to all members? Or would it be something that's just documented on the next meeting?
Yeah, I guess it would be part of this, the focus on the procurement training for new, adherence with the purchasing policy. So the management comment, while not directly stating we're going to look into specifically the software, it would occur anyway with the identifying reasons for the occurrence and associate adherent, and then adhering with the purchasing policy. So I could just provide an email response to members.
Ms. Newby, are you happy that that adequately responds to your question?
Yes, I am, but it could well be something that the internal auditor looks at as well when he's looking into this area. But it's common throughout government now, and certainly major companies use it as well. It's not a hard thing. It's not hard. It's not difficult to get it put into software.
Are there any further questions? Sorry, Fraser?
I concur with Ms. Newby's response.
Councillor Singh, you have a question?
Just to clarify on that, I think on page 12 of our meeting agenda, I think it's mentioned by the auditor that ensuring purchase orders are raised in advance of requesting services and ensuring invoices without purchase order numbers are returned to the supplier. I think that's clarified because I think they already picked it up, Regulation 5 findings. So to me, I think we are covered as long as we can change the wording, as Fraser said, internally, administratively. Should be, I think that's been covered on page 12.
Yeah, and I think Ms. Newby was just relaying an approach to addressing that problem.
Yeah, that's all good from my end. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Is there someone happy to move the officer recommendation as it stands before us? Thank you, Ms. Newby. Seconded.
Router.
Thank you. Anyone opposed to the motion? Item is carried unanimously. 5.1.3 Strategic Risk Register Quarterly Review Report, February 2022. Are there any questions in relation to this report? Ms. Newby?
I have quite a few. Risk number 2, I'll start with. This is a significant risk area. And we now have some good controls in place there. I was just wondering how often those controls are undertaken, because some of them regard, you need to do a review to undertake them. And I'm just making sure it's fine to have them written down, but how often are we actually carrying these out?
I ask the Director of Corporate Services to respond to your first question.
Routinely. So if we look through that, is there a particular control that you were interested in, Miss Newby? But so we have got the organisational development roadmap in place. We do have an administration officer accommodation reference group. We're certainly staying abreast of the industrial relations landscape and change, probably better than we ever have, I would say, at the moment. We have a employee wellbeing program, and significant work is going into that, particularly around the changes to the health and safety laws that are upcoming. We have implemented the work from home option and flexible work arrangements. There is work being done on office and depot accommodation feasibility plans. Election outcomes are incorporated within the corporate business plan to ensure these commitments are adequately resourced, so that's occurred. Flexible work box, so that is now in place. We do have a staff recognition and reward program, which is, I would say, almost constantly under review. It routinely comes up at exec meetings, and the review of parity of salaries across the organisation. So that has occurred, and I might just refer to Paul just for that one, but I believe that's actually now complete.
That's right. Thanks, Fraser. We certainly have reviewed every position across the organisation. We went through market tested directors, managers, coordinators and officers. We have done all of those with one more change to make in regards to the supervisors' positions at the depot, which we're just finalising now. But yes, we have certainly done probably the most significant comprehensive salary review and market testing across the organisation, which people seem very happy with.
No, I think that was fine. It was just to make sure that we are sort of following up on the controls and not leaving them just sitting there as things we could levers we could use perhaps. It's just that this one is significant.
Yeah, no, we're working on it every day.
Ms. Newby, your second question?
Just with 3 and 4, have we had any indication from the WAPC on this revised timetable for getting back to us, or we have that? I mean, they should give an indication because this has been going on for so long.
I certainly agree. Could I ask the Director of Planning perhaps to answer that question?
Certainly, and good evening, everyone. We have been following up very, very frequently. The latest update that I received from officers was a indicative timeframe of May this year. Now that's almost 24 months since Council adopted for final approval. I've found as much as possible sort of trying to just keep regularly in touch, assisting them with any questions or comments that they have on our proposals is probably the best way of seeing action. We have essentially one officer allocated to the Shire at the department to deal with our major strategic items, of which we've been probably one of the leaders in terms of amount of work that we've generated for the Planning Commission across both the scheme strategy and new developer contribution plans. They're certainly detailed pieces of information and projects. So I think that May is at least realistic. I think if they had have said February or March, I would have said, highly unlikely. May means they really have to be focused now on trying to prepare the early drafts of their report to their Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Your third question?
With risk number 3, the second one, which is about the reporting to Council on the status of grant-funded funded works. This is the one that our Shire President raised for us. I think this is really important because if the funds aren't spent, they could be lost. And I just didn't want to, we've got a completion date of the end of June, but I didn't want us to get to the end of June and say, goodness me, we haven't spent it all. So I was just wondering if we should have a review date for this prior to the year end, so that we could at least try and make sure that we do achieve it or get extensions on the grants.
Madam Chair, I can help answer that question if you like. Certainly, it's an ongoing issue that we have. I know the Director of Infrastructure has actually already requested some extensions to some road grants this year when we didn't get any tenders for those. I might ask him to speak to that in a minute. But in fact, we have a workshop with councillors as well very soon to talk about some of the major grant funding programs that we have and some of my KPIs to discuss those. So it's certainly something we're constantly working on, and looking at ways that we can ensure that we seek extensions. And I have to say that the funding bodies seem very happy with the extensions, because we're like everybody else experiencing the same challenges. So when we can demonstrate we've done everything we possibly can to address something, they seem quite relaxed about that. So I'll ask the Director of Infrastructure to give the example of the road grants we've asked for an extension for in that regard. Reza, are you there?
Reza has no symbols by his name.
So I can answer that. I can explain that. So there were 4 roads where we didn't receive any tenders for. We went out to tender process for them. Didn't receive any responses from the market at all. So we've gone back to the main roads and asked for an extension till December for those projects, and they've agreed to those extensions. So that's a classic example where we're looking at it constantly as we're going along.
Oh, look, no, and that's good, Paul. But no, that's good, because if we don't apply for those extensions before we get there, we could be in trouble again.
Indeed.
Ms. Newby, did you have a further question?
Yes. Number 6, we've got options to improve the management of the reserves, and I was just wondered how our controls have been adjusted, because it appears to have been completed. Because I went back to the previous what we've reported in November, and I'm just wondering how that, if those controls had been. I'll start again. There are options to improve the management of the reserves, first of all, and I was just wondering if they had been completed, because they've dropped off. If so, how have our controls been adjusted to incorporate any findings, or have they just been converted to new actions? My overall concern is there's significant risk, but many items are not due for completion until June to December 23, which will take us through another fire season. So that's number 6. It's just when things are of significant risk.
Could I ask the Director of Development Services to provide a response?
Thank you for the question. So the reserve management plans, is that specifically the area that you're inquiring about, Ms. Newby?
Yes.
Yeah, look, I like to be able to answer the questions, but this one actually I am reliant upon the Infrastructure Directorate in this regard. So the reserve management plans sort of do fall within that remit of the organisation. And I know with certain recent structural changes within the directorate, we've got now more focused resources on that element. And certainly the associated process of getting our asset management data together and putting in place the management plan specific to assist us in managing, not just the fire risk management, but all those other elements of asset management that, pose a risk is underway.
Guess one we just need to watch. I do have some other questions on.
Yeah, sorry, carry on, Ms. Newby.
Number 8, the asset maturity project. We've changed our completion date from June 22 to December 23, which seems quite a long extension, like 18 months. I'm just wondering why. Because it's in progress.
The CEO or the Director of Infrastructure?
Okay, so I might just jump in there if that's okay.
Or indeed, Corporate Services?
I apologise. It's just that it's been the asset data has been moved into finance, and really without the data, it will make all other things difficult, because that's the thing that the decisions are made on. So it's moved into finance. However, we've lost our finance manager and our financial accountant, and there has also been a resource. So the leadership in that space has just departed momentarily, and we'll get somebody else in there. Further, we had a new resource devoted to that, what we called an assets BSA, a business system administrator, and because there is significant work needed to develop the databases to maintain this stuff, and to to get data in, because it's not simply a matter of just there's a new road, come in. No, all of the spatial and geometric data needs to come in, as well as financial aspects to it and other descriptions. So it's actually a fairly complex area, and there needs to be 54. The last count, we needed 54 quite specialised tools to bring that data in. So we started off going to market. I think we were offering $95,000 for a role to help develop these tools to bring this data in, and I think we were up to about, well, we just can't find anyone. I think we ended up offering some gentleman like $130,000 to come on board, and he still said no. So I'm just currently working with the IT department to come up with a different solution to progress this project. Just this week, I think we're going to try and break up the project into much smaller pieces and piecemeal them out to contractors, but we'll just see if we can find someone to do that work, which is where we're up to now. So, if we can get a little bit further, if we can get these contractors on, that we might be able to do better than that time frame, but there's certainly some significant challenges in that space just at the moment, just given that there appears to be just nobody out there who can do the work.
So, Fraser, this includes the asset handover, doesn't it, from developers?
Yeah, it does. Yes, it does. So the handover is happening. We're checking that what they do hand over is there, and that they are providing correct data, like that. So what they're telling us is there, that those inspections are all happening. Because we've restructured that area significantly. That was one of the areas that was restructured in the Infrastructure Directorate, and also in my own Corporate Services Directorate. So I guess all the on the ground stuff is happening. It's just developing the system so we can get the data in a simple way, a quick, speedy way, because you can imagine there's quite a lot of this stuff coming in at the moment, and then also being able to report on it. And model it for the future.
Yeah, I was just wondering if, like, for the handover from the developers, perhaps there's a control we could put in there in the meantime to handle that, because it's one of the things that comes up on our audit report.
I know that, if I can jump in there as well, I know that the Director of Infrastructure has done a lot of work in that space. I think he's back in the group now. Reza, are you there to answer that question of the improvements that team's making?
Thanks, Paul. Good evening. Do you have my voice now?
Yes, thank you, Reza.
Great. Yes. So in terms of the handover process with developers in road assets, parks and gardens, drainage assets, we've implemented quite a few changes in our processes in hold points for controls, make sure they're inspected more routinely at hold points. For example, drainage pipes are inspected before they're backfilled. We're doing a lot more checking against the design drawings to what's on the ground. And we're making sure the developers are handing over the data in the format that we need. So we don't have to work on the reformatting the data before it goes into our asset register. So we have done quite a lot of improvements there, and that's a work in progress. So we are doing a lot of work in that space.
So just to reiterate Ms. Newby's question about whether there is potential for additional control.
Yes, there is. That's, as I said, work in progress. So we will be putting in more controls in terms of inspections and compliance with the specifications and the engineering drawings.
So that will appear in the next version of the register.
We have probably done 80% of the work that we wanted to do in terms of our changed our processes. So there's probably another 20% to go, and I think they'll be done in the next 3 to 6 months. Also, in regards to our internal processes within the infrastructure services, when we are taking over assets, we will be developing maintenance schedules to maintain those assets as we take them over. For example, for ovals, parks and gardens, the developer is responsible to maintain those for 2 years from the date of practical completion. So that gives us 2 years to plan our resourcing, our maintenance. So we are doing work on that space as well. So I would say in the next 6 months, we will see pretty much all that work done.
Can I just add, please, that you'll see reporting on this come through the corporate business plan, the quarterly reporting in the corporate business plan. There's a project in there that talks to the asset maturity project.
Thank you, Fraser. Ms. Newby, does that answer your question?
My iPad's very sensitive to this mute. I think as they're partly completed, it may be worth updating the controls as we go through, because when you partly complete it and you implement those controls, I think it would be good if we could put those through under the control section and not wait always till the absolute end of the project. That's any comment about that?
I tend to agree. Would there be any issue with doing that, Fraser?
Yes, that's just not how this whole structure works. It doesn't become a control until it's finished. But like this is what we're doing to this is us developing a control, but it's not a control until it's finished. Like for it to become a control, it actually needs to be in place and operating. Whereas that's not the case. It's a work in progress.
I think, Fraser, though, if there's a number of controls that you're putting in place, which is often how it happens, you can put the ones that you have developed as a control.
Well, I guess that's what. Well, so the piece of paper is already pretty busy. My view is the piece of paper is already quite busy and small with a lot of writing on it. We've got the amber in that it's in progress. We've got quarterly reporting on it. It would be my view that's, do we really want, it's up to the committee. You're receiving the information, but I guess it's officers' view that there's a lot of information on this page, and really would it enhance your decision making to make it busier.
Miss Newby, do you have any?
I sort of disagree, because I read through all the controls as well, and I think it's just it sort of gives us a reassurance that we're doing a lot of things that are are right in helping us to achieve our objectives and decrease our risks, particularly when they're significant ones.
Madam
So
Chair, if Ms Newby wants to move the motion with that addition being updated, that's an option for Ms Newby to do.
So just to clarify, Ms Newby, would this be in relation to 7 and splitting it up into more?
A dog?
Someone's not muted. Could I please just remind everyone to mute their microphones unless they are talking?
It wasn't. I wasn't looking at splitting number 7 into different parts, if you like. But I guess how I was thinking about it is, I know that they've done a lot of work on this business with the developers, and it's not that part of it isn't necessary. The whole 100% of it isn't a work in progress. They've effectively implemented controls already. So I was just sort of thinking it might be helpful to document them. But if it's too difficult to do, I'm not going to make a big thing about it. But it is just helpful to know that we are progressing these and progressing controls. And it doesn't happen today when the thing's 100% finished that we now implement all those controls. It tends to happen with these things is that we do it on an ongoing basis. Just a comment, and I'm not going to make I don't want to suggest a motion about it, but I think it's something perhaps I would ask that we all have a think about. How we can make this document more useful. Yeah.
Thank you for that comment. Reza, did you have a question?
I just wanted to add a bit more to that, it wasn't the case that we didn't have controls. A lot of the controls were there. What we are doing, we're reviewing our processes to make sure they're tighter. Those controls are better enforceable. And also, one of the questions was also resourcing. So with the restructure of the directorate, now we've allocated more resources to that area of the business. So we think with the new structure, we want to review all the processes, make sure all the controls are there and they are enforced at the right time, the right way. So yeah, it's really just an improvement to our process.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Reza. Ms Newby, did you have any further questions on this one?
Oh, no, not on that. Well, yeah, on the number 13, number 6, I think it just needs a date change. It says the target date's the 31st of July 2021, which might be tricky to achieve.
Sorry, did you say 13 or 6?
13.
13.
Yeah. It's number 6 in 13. It says it's the equine facility master plan. It's just its target date. I'm sure it's just a typo. It says the 31st of July 2021.
Not on mine. Mine says 31 July 2022.
Mine
Me
too.
too.
I've
Me
got
too.
21. I'm looking at the updated. I'm not looking at the final one. I was looking at the marked up copy. So obviously it's been picked up because I was working off the marked up one.
Okay.
Sorry. And
Yep.
number
Appears to be,
15,
yep.
Yeah, it's been fixed between that and that. Number 15, I was just wondering if there'd been any consideration of volunteer screening. And the reason that I say that, I know that some of the insurer claims that were coming through were effectively workers' comp claims, particularly with the firefighters. I think some of those volunteers shouldn't have been volunteering. So I'm just wondering if it had been considered to do some screening of volunteers. Like I'm 69 and pretty fit, and you know, can still run half marathons. However, I don't know that you necessarily want me on the end of the hose as one of your firefighters.
I would suggest there's the
Because if you
mental,
get,
there's the physical and mental side of that too.
Madam Chair, either Helen could answer that question if it's more about volunteers more generally, but or Andrew might be able to answer the question if it's about the bushfire volunteers.
Ms. Newby, is it specifically about the bushfire volunteers that you're concerned about, or is it any volunteers?
I think for any volunteers, but in particular, we have more of an exposure with the bushfire volunteers, to be frank, because it's a far more physical and demanding type of volunteering than often other volunteering.
Is the Director of Development Services happy to take that question?
Well, thank you for the question. Through you, Chair. We have just over 200 active volunteers. We have a range of ages. One of the key strengths of our brigades is the mentorship that the older volunteers do provide the newer volunteers. So it's very critical that we protect that, and I'm sure Ms. Newby wouldn't be implying that people are unfit simply because of their age. I guess in the short, the captain of each brigade is responsible in terms of ensuring that the active brigade members are fit when they turn out. There is annual work done in terms of reassessing fitness, but as we'll see in the subsequent 2 reports, there is a significant amount of further work that needs to be done, given the current, I guess, findings of the recent 2 audits into the bushfire brigade function.
I wasn't suggesting on age, although it obviously it can be a consideration. It wasn't because of that. It was just knowing some of the types of claims, if you like, that have come through. And employers these days normally ask for assessments on staff, and I know it's hard to get volunteers, so we've typically just taken volunteers. Whoever wants to volunteer is very more than welcome, and that's important to have a welcoming and an embracing structure to get volunteers. However, we also need to protect our financial health and the people, sometimes volunteers from themselves. So I was just wondering if it had been considered whether a screening as a control. That was all.
I think I can add to that and say that the new legislation I think will require it at some point in time. But
yeah, I think it will. But it will be. So the answer is perhaps we should be considering it as a control.
Through the chair, it's Helen here. In terms of just general volunteers with the Shire, I actually would need to take that on notice. I'm not very intimate with our selection or induction process of our volunteers. So the bushfire volunteers are very structured through DFIS, and DFIS puts a lots of bits in place around their onboarding. But I would have to go and have a look at our general process for volunteers in the Shire outside of the bushfire area.
Okay.
I don't have any more questions.
Thank you, Ms. Newby. Is there any questions from anyone else in relation to this item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Newby has covered off on the questions I had.
Thank you, Councillor Rich. Is there someone happy to move the officer recommendation? Councillor Coles, are you happy to move?
Yeah, no, I'm not. I've got a quick question, and it is difficult in these remote situations to follow along, but I'm doing the best I can. I'm just trying to think, and it's something that I raised on Monday night, and I would appreciate the opportunity to raise this, and notwithstanding my financial conflict that's been raised before, we're talking about the risk register. Has anything been identified with the election and the issues that we've had with the election in October last year? I would have thought that would be a particular risk. So I probably should have asked this earlier, but can I just put it out to maybe Fraser or the CEO, and just, do we need to, everything that's going on in the background, does this need to be identified as a risk and potentially put on the register somewhere?
Ask the CEO.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Chair. Councillor Coles, as was my response at the special at the council meeting Monday night last week, you have declared a financial interest in the matter, so it's probably not appropriate for that question to be asked here. I'm happy to take that question offline. However, officers.
Sorry, Paul. I don't understand why it's not appropriate when this is an audit, risk and governance meeting. I'm happy to be excused from the meeting if that is the case, but I think it is a fairly live and real risk at the moment. I think it's reputational risk and a very, very significant risk that we're exposing ourselves to as a Shire and as a council.
Councillor Coles, I believe the CEO has provided a response to the question, though, that he's happy to take the question offline and that this isn't the forum for the question.
Okay, I'll have a chat to you later, Paul.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Coles.
Are there any further questions, or is there a member happy to move the officer recommendation as it stands? I have, Councillor Coles, I have you, oh no, you've taken your hand away. Ms. Newby? Councillor Rich, you're happy to move?
Yes, I am.
Oh, are you happy to second, Ms. Newby?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Coles, do you have another question?
No, I'll take my hand down.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone opposed to the motion as it stands before us? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 5.1.4, update report on work health and safety reforms and bushfire brigade preparation. Are there any questions from anyone in relation to this item? No, there being no questions, is there anyone happy to move the officer's recommendation as it stands? Thank you, Ms. Newby. Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Second.
Thank you.
Is there anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 5.1.5, internal audit plan update. Are there any questions in relation to this, Ms. Newby? No? Yes? No?
I do. Sorry.
I'm
playing around with the mute button again. Look, we had previously in the audit plan, we had status tracking, and that has been dropped off. I'm just wondering why that's been dropped off our audit plan. Because, yes, I'm referring to an audit plan which we had in November 2021, and it was the status tracking was on it. So I don't understand why this is the status report, which is meant to come out quarterly, and it's been dropped off. Now, I did ask the question about why we didn't have a status report at our last meeting, and I'll find it here. Where is it? we were told that we would have it for this meeting. So I don't understand. I said, do we have an updated status report? We said we'd have it at the next meeting. Well, we haven't got it at this meeting, and we've dropped it off our activity, which is on page 40 of 43.
Director of Community and Organisational Development. Sorry, Helen, I'm having a brain freeze.
It's okay. Thank you through the chair. Yes, so that's actually still in there. It's referred to as audit recommendation tracking. So you'll see in the table on page 40 or 43, you'll see it's down the bottom and it's marked as a delayed activity. There is a little explanation there in terms of the paragraph. There's quite a bit. It's been a very long time since that audit tracking was undertaken, and there's quite a bit to sit and go through. So along with the internal auditor getting settled and the work that he has been undertaking, he hasn't been able to complete that yet. So we'll be aiming for that to be complete for the next ARG meeting.
We had audit recommend tracking before as well. The status report was separate. And that was a report, again, that had to be quarterly. There were 3 quarterly reports: quarterly reporting, a status report, and an audit recommendation tracking. There were 3 reports, which we were supposed to get quarterly. And now we're down to 2. The status report has been dropped off.
Thank you through the chair. My recollection is that we would get an internal audit plan update, and then we would get the recommendations tracking. And the internal audit plan update would consider any of the works that have been undertaken and any completed audits. And then the second one would be an update on the tracking of the delivery of those recommendations from external audits. So
No,
there is only one report. There is only one report here, but normally there would be 2.
Look, we can take it offline if you like, but I've got in front of me here the plan that was presented to us at the November meeting. And it clearly has the 3 reports. And it was because we didn't have the status report. I actually, as I said, I raised it as a question. And I'm just concerned that we don't have a status report. I mean, I can see what's been added. I can see that one's been delayed and we've added 2 things to it, but I'm a little confused over these reports. And we were told at the last meeting that some of the work had been done by the previous internal auditor, and they had that work had to be reviewed, but we haven't had an update on that. And I believe that's what should be contained in the status report. We used to get them when we had the previous internal auditor. So I'm really querying why we haven't got those. But we can take it offline because we're not going to, obviously, we can't resolve it here. And the auditor isn't here to update it, why that's been dropped off.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. I'm just looking at the previous minutes from the 15th of November. So the status report, internal audit and the audit recommendation tracking are listed in the plan, as you're saying. I think in this case, we have called it an internal audit plan update, but perhaps the better term to use will be status report internal audit. So it is to serve the same purpose, this report that we have before us now, but perhaps the more proper term would have been status report internal audit. Moving forward, there'd be a status report internal audit and an audit recommendation tracking report.
Ms. Newby, does that now address your...
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. I think it's very light on for information. The internal audit's really supposed to report through to this committee. And I know we haven't had an internal audit function for some time, but at the moment, I must say I'm really in the dark about where we are going with the internal audit and how we're setting priorities. And I don't think that's included in what we've been given here.
Can we indeed then take that offline? And Paul, what would be the appropriate?
Chair, I would suggest that Ms. Newby and Helen catch up and discuss it, and we can bring reports back to the next meeting.
Okay. Is there
Yeah,
anyone?
I'm happy. I'm happy with that because I've got the previous report we have, and they were really detailed, which were
Yep.
helpful to us.
Yep.
And we just haven't had those for some time now.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions in relation to this item? Is there anyone happy to move the officer recommendation that the Audit, Risk and Governance Committee recommends Council receives the internal audit plan update? Councillor Rich, second. Anyone happy to second? Thank you, Ms Berry. Anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 6, motions of which notice has been given, of which there's nil. Urgent business, of which there's nil. So I would declare the meeting closed at 6:46 p.m. Thank you everyone for your attendance and bearing with me in this first of our electronic meetings for 2022.
You've done a good job, Lauren. Thank you.